This is Eye on Sullivan. I am your host, Mike McGuire, joined today, as I am each week, by the chairman, Rob Doherty. Rob, spring is in the air in Sullivan County.
It was like 60 degrees. You don't see a few chunks of ice now. It's pretty good stuff.
It's pretty good. And you didn't wake up in Florida this morning.
I did not.
That's a change.
My wife was here all week. We had our 30th wedding anniversary last Tuesday.
Magnificent.
Which was exciting. And then my youngest son got engaged.
Wow, the Doherty clan is growing.
Oh, well, hopefully not just yet, but, let's...
he's marrying somebody.
Yeah, he's going to marry somebody.
Because, marrying himself is kind of strange.
Not for him, but I get what you're saying.
He's a wrestler.
He is a wrestler. So he, I believe, yes, they got engaged on Saturday night with some friends and family out to dinner. And then she was totally surprised. It was a pretty good, well-planned event. And then they came over the house last night, and we started talking venues, and you know how that goes. You have a child that's married as well.
I've been through it. It's an exciting time, and it's like it's the first part of the next phase of our lives. We've raised our children. And now they get married, and you have all of those celebrations that replace the high school graduations and the Section 9 tournaments and those kinds of things. And now I'm sure my daughter-in-law will be excited to know that I'm comparing her wedding to a Section 9 tournament. But they were pretty exciting for us.
They are pretty exciting.
They were pretty important. Pretty much our whole house revolved around particularly the Section 9 ski meet as yours did with the wrestling tournament.
Yeah, that's correct.
So it's a next phase, and then the phase beyond that is when the grandchildren arrive. I've got 2. You don't have any that we know of yet. I only have 2 that we know of. And that's great because, of course, you get to fill them with sugar and send them home.
Yeah. Just wind them up, and say that you walk across the driveway. That's where you belong, son.
There you go. So that's great. So we wish the Dohertys all the best.
Thank you.
Have they set a date yet?
So they're looking at October of 2026.
All right.
As you know, my nephew and his fiance get married this October.
Nice.
So you had to give breathing room to everyone.
You got to coordinate the schedules.
You got to coordinate the schedules. So so they're looking at October of 2026. Calling venues today, and getting after it.
Well, now, when your nephew gets married, we've got to make sure the roads are all clear because there'll be no one to operate that heavy rig.
There will be nobody. I believe almost everyone in the county that does that type of stuff will be there.
We'll be there.
Yes.
Well, that's terrific. Well, folks, what we wanted to do today, we don't have a special guest today because we've had a number of shows over the last month or so, and there's an opportunity to follow up on some of those and bring people up to speed as spring is in the air, which means there'll probably be 18 inches of snow will be there and we wake up in the morning because that's spring in the Catskills.
Correct.
But we want to bring you up to date on where we are as we start to head into summer, and of course summer means that the political season is back on.
Oh, well, it's very much on. Like when we discussed this, 5-6 weeks ago, we were talking about the convention, the Republican convention, and so the Republicans had their convention at the Villa Roma, and it was basically about whether to endorse. This was an odd one, was to endorse the incumbent Mike Schiff, 20-year incumbent, the challenger Tim Diamond.
Right, we spoke with Tim here on Sullivan. We had a nice visit with him.
Yeah,
nice guy.
Nice guy, knowledgeable guy.
Very knowledgeable.
Yep. And then there was a third choice of no endorsement.
None of the above.
None of the above.
So it's a multiple choice.
It was very much a multiple choice. The party leadership was pushing for Dick Coombe had put Tim Diamond's name into consideration. And as you know, you've been through this process.
Sure.
Someone puts your name up, and then you get a first and a second. And usually there's a second person that puts your name up. And Dick Coombe put Mr. Diamond's name up. They both spoke beforehand. They both did a very good job, very compelling. I have to tell you, as a resident here, you're in good hands, with whoever becomes sheriff.
Right.
I mean, you are in very good hands with whoever becomes sheriff. They're both very good. Mike's been doing it, I believe, for 48 years.
And it's nice to have a steady hand on the tiller,
I
but you
agree.
also need to always be bringing in new ideas.
Correct.
So each of them have their pluses and minuses.
Correct.
And the important thing is that people would make an informed decision. So what was the outcome of the convention?
So so we take a vote. So every committee person that was there, I believe there's 14,500 total votes possible because we have a weighted vote system in the Republican Party.
And where does that number come from? They just pick it out of the air?
Yeah, so it's how many votes your district. So I'm in Bethel 4, and then so as we discussed before, every election district has 2 people, and it's how many votes the gubernatorial candidate got in the last Republican guy in the last election. So, prime example, Bethel 1, which is has a lovely Susan Brown Otto and Ruth Duncan. They're 130 apiece. Okay, so Lee Zeldin got 260 votes in that district. So then, wherever the total is, you split by the 2 people, and that's what their weight is. So, I do know the total, but the party did not share that, so I will
respect that.
I will respect their wishes and not share it. But Mike won. The current sitting incumbent Michael Schiff, who's been sheriff for 20 years, he won the endorsement.
So that's an interesting point because we hear so much about transparency. Every time there's an election, we hear about transparency. And I'm not always sure what transparency is. I mean, oddly enough, we had a president assassinated 62 years ago, and we still don't know under the circumstances what happened. So there's been a lot of non-transparency.
Well, transparency is a funny little word there because I think it's wherever the person using it is. I mean, I think everyone that is using the word has their own definition of transparency. So one of the selling points of going for a non-endorsement was to unite the party. I mean that was the selling point, which didn't seem very logical.
Well,
to
so
me.
you're going to unite the party by taking out the longest-standing, well-serving public servant in the party.
That is correct.
That's logical.
Yeah, so
It's logical.
so
Continuity means we're going to
correct.
chop out the
So now you were at the last year's convention for a few moments.
Yep.
So Mr. Coombe did get up and said, he talked about how I was trying to divide the party last year by bringing up the fact that there's a law that says that if there's a Republican and a Democrat and you're in a Republican convention, you have to, and you can only endorse the Republican candidate. Okay?
It makes sense, and the law is such a pesky thing when it gets in the way of people's agenda.
So if you remember, Mr. Coombe agreed with me.
He did.
He did agree with me. So if he's saying that I was dividing the party, would that mean if he agreed with me, he was dividing the party as well?
Presumptively. I mean, all you were doing, as I recall, you weren't taking a stand based on your opinion.
No.
You were taking a stand based on the law.
Correct.
You were saying this is what the law is.
Correct.
This is all we can do. We've got a Democrat that's been nominated by somebody who was not a delegate.
Correct.
Shouldn't have even been there.
Correct.
And we had a Republican that was nominated. And this discussion has nothing to do with the ultimate winner and the job that you're doing. We're very satisfied with that. This is about the political process.
Correct.
So one was a Democrat, one was a Republican. They were at the Republican convention, and they tried to nominate a Democrat. And you pointed out the law doesn't allow us to. We don't have the authority to do that.
Correct. But here's the funny thing about that is that inside our bylaws as the Republican Party,
Familiar with those?
Yes, you are very much so. The chairman of the party at the time was Gary Moss, has every right to give the other candidate a Wilson Bakula.
Which affords them the opportunity to seek the party's nomination.
Correct, but to petition for the party's nomination, that is correct.
Which is it's different from the endorsement.
Correct. So it gives them, so if you're not in the party, by getting a Wilson Bakula, you then have the right to go out to get petitions to get onto the line and get into a primary against the person who is of that party.
Correct.
So, and the funny thing about that is, as we all know, Mr. Connolly won,
Yep.
and we had spoken. So this was like on a Wednesday night, I believe that took place. The following week, we had bumped into each other, and he said, "Hey, Rob, just out of curiosity, why did you do that?" And I said, Mr. Connolly, I mean, wouldn't you want? You're running for an office
That's
has
legal.
That is law and order,
Right?
And so we had a good 10-minute discussion about that. And at the end of the discussion, he says, fairly, I see your point, right? I mean, this wasn't a hostile conversation at all. It was, I see your point,
Right?
okay, and then they moved on from there.
Don't have to agree with it. He went on to win. He's operating the office now. He's approachable.
Oh, very much so.
He's very approachable. He's very analytical, very logical. That's fine. But those of us that are concerned with doing things the right way,
Correct.
Once you're in and you're governing, that's a different discussion.
Correct. That's a totally
Whether
different.
or not person A or person B is the most qualified candidate, when you're in the political arena
Correct.
and you're in these primary or you're in the party's conventions, there are rules that have to be followed.
Correct.
So what's interesting is we've all watched the presidential conventions, and most folks get their orientation to everything that they're not a part of in television.
Correct.
So you don't see a lot of nominating conventions other than the presidential conventions.
Correct.
Every 4 years. And those are played out on television, and they have the counters there, and we know exactly how many votes each person gets, how many delegates they each get, and then there is an endorsement and ultimately a nomination.
Correct.
What's the rationale for not sharing the number? I mean, these are elected officials,
Correct.
that are acting in their official capacity,
You're correct.
and the public doesn't have a right to know what they do, because I can look up and find out how any of my representatives voted on any issue,
I agree.
but not how they vote on determining who are going to be put up to be our representatives.
So correct. But let's just step back and let's talk about law and order. State rules state that you're not allowed to have a third option. Just so we're clear, okay? You're only allowed to have the candidates and the candidates only.
Right.
You're not allowed to have a no endorsement option. So they violated the rules there. The rationale, I cannot tell you. But, it's Greg Goldstein, and he, tends to operate outside the rules.
Well, whatever the rules that work for him. I remember a couple of years ago, he thought that it was absolutely the worst thing Gary Moss did, the leadership, Mr. Bose. The worst thing we could do is allow a primary. That's when Terry Bernardo was seeking the nomination for senator.
Well, as a matter of fact, Gary Moss endorsed my opponent. And after the election, he told me straight to my face that he went after me as a Republican chair, went after the sitting, District
Chairman of
1
the
chairman of the legislature, because he didn't agree with my vote. And that's a fact.
Well, I mean, that's kind of fundamental to our way of life in this country.
Well, I mean, I think that you vote in secrecy for a reason.
Right.
Number one, at the convention, it's not a show of hands.
Correct. There's a ballot.
There's a ballot, and you go in line, and so I'm in Bethel, so in this county, B is first, and you stand up there, and there's a proxy issue also. Each person has the right to carry one proxy. Bethel, there's 10 possible people who sit on the committee. There's 5 election districts, and there's 2 people apiece, and you get to carry one of their proxies. And I had my lovely wife's proxy, so I got to vote, twice because of
right. But the second time you were voting for your wife.
I'm voting for my wife,
and you're supposed to vote the way the person asks you to vote.
Some people write it on the proxy to avoid any problems because they don't know who the proxy is going to be handed to. Again, you're only allowed to vote one time. And the person has to be from your township also. So let's say my lovely wife said, Rob's out of his mind. Well, she has said that many times in this particular situation. And she says, I'm going to have my friend Christina from Thompson vote for me. That's not allowed.
Right.
It has to be someone from the town of Bethel. It does not have to be a committee person, but it has to be an elector from the town.
The Republican Party.
Correct.
So
a registered Republican.
A few years back, when there was an open seat for Senate, when Senator Martucci had elected not to seek re-election.
Correct.
It was dividing the party to seek a primary with a Sullivan County resident against an Otsego County resident from Cooperstown.
Cooperstown, New York, yes.
Okay. And that was a horrible thing, and you were compromising the best interest of the party by doing that.
No, what I had asked for, we had done. They had a vote. I was not a committeeman at the time. Keep in mind, I was a committeeman for well over a decade before I ran for office. Yes. You do remember that, right? I
remember that.
And I cast some pretty big votes.
Yeah, some very big votes.
Some very big votes. And do you know the results of some of my votes?
They're so numerous, it's hard to keep track.
I tell you. So they, it's supposed to go to a convention. It's supposed to be every member of the committee gets to vote. And it states it clearly in the rules, in our bylaws, by the way. Okay? So at that particular thing, they were saying chairs only get to vote. And I said, that's a violation of our rules. And the chair at the time of the party, who was Gary Moss, said, no, this is the executive committee. And I said, yeah, if you go to your bylaws, it clearly states we are an advisory committee only.
Correct.
And they disregarded that. Peter Obereg is a fine senator. He does a great job for us. We talk outside of the world of politics. We have a lot of common interests. He's in food science. I own restaurants and some other stuff. And so we've chatted up many times of our common interest in that area. So. They did it in, chairs only. Peter won that. I believe at the time, still current until April 26th, I believe, the BOE commissioner said that Terry Bernardo is new to the county, and, that's why we should vote against her. Keep in mind, she at the time, the BOE chair commissioner was also the chair of Thompson at the time, to be fair. But Terry
and Peter was not new to the county, just to be clear.
Peter has never lived in the county.
Correct.
But the funny thing about this is Terry had lived in Ulster County, which was part of the district, for 25 years.
Correct.
So
and was a legislative leader.
She was the chairperson of
Ulster County.
Ulster County, and then so it went to a vote. And I believe Terry won 3-1 in that vote.
Right.
And so she wound up losing the overall race by 200 votes. She moved on. She's now a legislator. Peter does a fine job as our state senator. He's here a lot.
And that process had a pretty significant effect on Peter coming into Sullivan County and getting to know the issues in Sullivan County.
Correct.
We met with you and I a number of times.
Correct. I always think that a primary process is good. A lot of people don't know the candidates. Like, we know the candidates. We tend to be inside the bubble on that stuff. I thought, again, I saw Lou, Sunday night. We talked about his primary with Camille O'Brien, and they sat right here in this studio, and they had a debate, and I thought it was a good debate.
And I think Ion Sullivan ought to look at doing a debate with these two sheriff candidates.
If they're both willing, I'd be more than happy to have him here.
That thud we just heard may have been Mike Sakel, but that's okay. We love Mike.
We love Mike, but and I thought that they discussed the issues. It does you don't have to go at each other. You could just see your vision of how you would be in that seat and how you would run that. There was a chairman before me in the legislature, and there's a chairman after me, and they clearly run it differently than I did, and that's what the people vote for. So
they do run it differently.
They do run it. I'm trying to be,
trying to be diplomatic.
Yeah,
and
they do run it differently.
Yeah. So we don't know the outcome of the vote other than we know who the winner was.
Yeah. So Michael Schiff was the winner.
All right. And so now what happens?
So now
Democrats have no candidate.
The Democrats have no candidate, but Mike Schiff is also endorsed. He had got the Wilson Bakula from the Conservative Party.
Right.
So he's pretty much assured to be on the ballot come November.
Right.
Keep in mind, I believe you need 68 signatures to gain the conservative, to have ballot access on the conservative line,
right?
Which is kind of a small number.
Sure.
In the Republican Party, it's like 840 something, but the funny thing is 840 something and a half. So it's odd.
Well, you get a half-hearted Republican.
No, we have plenty of them, but
Tom Bowes, for example, would be perfect.
Well, his name will be coming up shortly. So so now you go out and get petitions. Now keep in mind when Lou Gracia and Camille O'Brien ran against each other in a primary, Camille O'Brien, had a hard time getting signatures, and she was the endorsed candidate.
Sure.
And I had said several times, I think that the endorsed candidate should receive 10 signatures from every committee person there is.
How many committee people do we have?
So there's about $120.
All right. So if they get 10,
it's 1,200.
It's 1,200. They're all set.
Oh, more than all set. More than all set.
10 if you're a committee person to go out and get your 10. Not a major deal.
Usually you have a spouse, a kid, a few friends. I mean, it's over. I mean, I've gone out and got signatures before with Camille, oddly enough. Not in this situation, but, I mean, we got 20 in, 2 hours.
So has Tim Diamond announced that he is going to pursue a primary?
Oh, he's aggressively pursuing signatures, yes.
Okay, so assuming that the sheriff and Mr. Diamond each get the requisite number of signatures.
I think they will.
And they probably will. Then we will have a primary, and that takes place when?
June 24th.
All right. Now, who votes in that primary?
Only Republicans.
And where do they vote?
At your regular polling places.
Regular polling places. That's an election that's run by the Board of Elections.
Board of Elections, correct. And also on that is every committee person that runs also for the Republicans, they're on the ballot as well. And,
so the committee people are elected officials.
They are elected officials.
So the Board of Elections should be able to tell you who the committee people are, just like they can tell you who the legislators are.
You would think, yes.
But that's not always the case.
It's never been the case,
right.
I don't believe.
So, in fact, they often will tell you they don't have that information.
They'll tell you that they have to check with the chairman of the party,
right? Which
is, going back to the word transparency. If I was chair of the Republican Party, every committee person would have a copy of the bylaws.
Right.
They would have a copy of everybody who is a committee person throughout the county.
Right.
You'd have it broken down and what their weight of their seat is worth.
Because that has to be public information.
That has to be public information.
I mean, without that being public, you have no transparency.
It's just shroud of secrecy. And then so now let's take a vote, right? You don't know who's on the committee.
Right.
You don't know who's on the proxies.
Right.
And you don't know how much your seat's worth.
Correct.
Okay. But let's go vote and see how it goes.
See how it goes.
And then at the end of the vote, don't worry, I'll count them for you, and then I'll tell you who won.
Right.
But I'm not going to tell you by how much or how little.
Right.
How does that sound?
That sounds like Sounds like something that we might see in some of our Eastern Bloc nations.
Well, I think that's why there needs to be a serious change in the Republican Party.
There's no question, because the part that folks miss is that these committee people are not just like selected to be committee people, they're elected officials.
Correct.
So they're answerable to their constituents.
You're correct.
Which is probably the most grassroots of grassroots positions, because when you're in, say, Bethel 1, you've got a designated area of a neighborhood or so. That's where you are, and that's your representative.
It's a pretty tight area, by the way. In Bethel, again, there's 5 districts. Some towns have only 2. They only have 1 ED, but they're fairly small towns also. So I think that is about as. I know villages in this county that have more people in it than election districts.
Sure. So when is the primary?
June 24th.
All right. And so Republicans can vote. They go to the regular polling places. And folks, it's very important in our audience that you get out there and vote. It's just as important as voting in November, so that you know that the candidate that most carries the values that you have as a Republican or as a Democrat or as a conservative becomes your candidate, so that your brand means something.
Correct.
It's very important.
Correct.
So we're going to keep an eye on that as we do try to keep an eye on Sullivan.
Yeah.
And we are going to keep
pretty
you
nifty
posted
name.
and remind everybody that those primaries will be coming up in June.
Correct.
Now, I heard a term the other day, and I really didn't understand what it was. The term was Council of Governments.
Mm-hmm.
What is the Council of Governments? Where's they're located? We have the Government Center, but I don't know what the Council of Governments is.
So the Council of Governments is in our charter, and it has to do with every governing body, political governing body, municipal governing body in the county. So
villages, towns, county.
Yep, county. You're supposed to meet at least once a term.
Mm-hmm.
I did not call them together. Remember, we had COVID during mine. So
the first 2 years.
So the first 2 years you really didn't have it. And then after that, I went to 5 or 6 supervisors meetings. So I was pretty clear on the issues that they had.
Sure.
The one issue, so the major issues that we deal with in the county, the Council of Governments doesn't deal with, oddly enough, which is Medicaid and the cost of Medicaid. We are the highest per capita user of Medicaid in the state of New York.
Right.
And there's currently a cap on how much you have to pay for your Medicaid, but for a county in the state of New York. And if that cap was ever lifted, Sullivan County would be bankrupt in a day.
In a day.
In one day, we would be bankrupt. We could not afford that.
Right.
And then the other issue, obviously, in my mind, is trash. For 2 reasons. One, there's impending doom on Seneca Meadows closing.
Yep.
And 2 is the way we handle our trash. We do except for burning it in a burn barrel, if you had the next step of what the worst thing to do, that would be us.
Put it in the ground. In the Council of Governments, though, what input do they have on the garbage? That's a county issue, the garbage situation.
They don't. By the way, just so we're clear, the county's not responsible for your garbage, okay?
Correct.
It is a town issue.
Correct.
It is a village issue. This county happens to handle all $17 million of trucking it up to Seneca Meadows. We employ the people that run our, transfer stations, which are, vast. There's one in Thompson, there's one in Mamakaden, there's one in Ferndale. Oddly enough, there's one in Coshecton, there's one in Rockland.
Neversink.
Yeah, Neversink. I was going to get to Neversink and Bethel last for a reason.
Mamakaden.
And then, and Mamakaden. So the thing is that Bethel and Neversink have their own transfer stations, but they're run by the town.
Right.
Okay, they're run by the town, and the town takes a loss on running them.
Town employees.
Correct, they're town employees. There's only 2 towns that do that. Obviously, Thompson couldn't do that because it's the center for all the big haulers and everything else.
Sure. And
then I don't feel that it would be fair to Liberty either because of the setup that they have there also is more conducive to a county-wide disposal center. So that's not fair to either one of those townships, in my opinion. But, the Coshecton, the Calhoun, the Highland, the Mamakaden, and the Rockland one, we pay... And when I say we're talking about the taxpayer of this county, pay about $550,000 for each one of them.
Yeah. When
the towns could easily be running them themselves, and should be because Bethel and Neversink does it, by the way.
Sure. So,
but those topics won't come up.
They won't come up. So now, when we had George Conklin here, we talked about the way the county is funded.
Correct.
We all know property taxes. We get that post-Christmas card first week of January, and we pay our taxes, and those are actually for the towns that we live in, the fire districts, and for the county. And the county is usually the smallest part of that because it's obviously the biggest population.
Yes.
Oddly enough, it's usually just the smallest percentage of that.
Correct.
And then George said that sales tax had actually eclipsed property tax as the leading portion of our revenue stream for the county.
Correct. And in fact, last year, so when the budget's done the previous year, you try to be conservative, and the county took in $3 million more than the budgeted amount. So they were plus $3 million.
In sales tax.
In sales tax.
All right. So there are those that would say that people travel to our stores and they drive along the town's roads and they take advantage of the town's parking and the town's amenities to go to the stores to spend money. It's the towns that attract them there because it's the towns that get the stores there. But why shouldn't the towns get a little drink out of the sales tax revenue?
Correct. So on a 10,000-foot view of that, that makes perfect sense.
Right.
Okay. But when a supervisor or a mayor asks for that, when they know the inside story, that's disingenuous at best.
Sure.
Okay. So in this county, when I was in office, we made a list of everything that we pay for as a county that we are not mandated to do.
And that benefits the towns because everything the county does benefits the towns.
Correct. So, again, we can go back to the garbage. We spend, I believe it's $17 million in trucking. And now that just went up because our dumping fees went up by $11. But this legislature was kind enough to raise it by $30 so that they can make it another $1.9 million.
And again, the Carters do pay for dumping the stuff at the county.
Correct. But we have to take it upstate.
Take it upstate.
Correct.
We have to maintain the transfer stations and all that.
Correct. So, that's a major expense.
Sure.
Another major expense, when the legislature went from Board of Supervisors to the legislature, I believe it's 28 or 32 years ago, or whenever that was. I'm not sure what number it is at this point. The supervisors thought they were cute back then, and they hamstrung the county with giving them any bridge over, 25 feet, I believe is. So any bridge bigger than 25 feet, the county now needs to maintain.
And Ed McAndrew could tell you exactly how many bridges that we have.
He gave me a map of it. I had it in my office.
We have them all. They're all out there, and suffice to say, you folks drive around the county. Half the time you don't realize when you're crossing a bridge.
Correct. They do an excellent job.
It's not like the Tappan Zee Bridge. These are lots of our highways have lots of bridges on them.
Yeah, so the topography lends for bridges because you have a situation where you have lots of streams and lots of gullies and lots of mountainous areas, and you have to get from one even flat surface to another even flat surface, and unfortunately, that usually takes a bridge. And we, as a county, pick up that expense, and that's a $10 million a year expense to maintain those bridges. Another expense that we have on the county level, these are the big three, is the workers' comp. The workers' comp is on the county's levy. That's what we tax for. They pay the bill, but it's on our levy, and it would bankrupt most towns if they had to take it on. If we were if the legislature turned around and voted. So. And then there's a fourth one that would hurt certain townships very badly. It's called chargebacks.
Ooh, yeah. What's that about?
Okay, so chargebacks are an interesting thing. So let's say you live in. We'll take Bethel because I live in Bethel, right? And you're like, okay, I live in Bethel, and it takes me 35 minutes to get to Sullivan County Community College.
Okay.
But if I get in my car, I can get to Orange County Community College in 40 minutes, and then after school, after I go to my class, I can go to a mall. I can,
get a job down there.
Change my oil, go to Planet Fitness, whatever you want to do, right? And you're down in, a city, right? So when a child from one county goes to another county's community college and gets financial aid, they charge that back.
Well, whether they get financial aid or not.
Or not, correct.
So, what happens is the counties, as this county does, provides funding
correct
to maintain the community college.
Correct.
And that funding comes from tax dollars. So
it's
about $4.2 million.
Correct. So under Education Law 6301, the counties are supposed to provide half of that. I'm sorry, a third. That is a state law on the education law, and it has not been funded.
So the county's a third.
Yeah.
And the other 2/3 are?
The state. And the school.
The tuition, the school.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
Or however they raise funds.
So we've got this 3-cylinder engine has been running on 2 cylinders for the last couple of years.
Since 1972, yes.
So 52 years.
Yeah, so when
the state gets around to it, it's only 52 years.
It's only 52 years. We have never had an assembly person or a state senator that represents us put forth a bill to enact Education Law 6301.
So, assuming that right now you've got the county and the school are each putting in about $4.2 million each.
Correct.
That should be reduced. That $8 million should be reduced by at least $1 million.
Oh, it should be
divided by 3 should be under 3.
Yeah, so it should be like 2.6 or so.
So 2.6 to 4.2 is $1.5 million a year for 52 years.
Correct.
That's a fair amount of change.
Well, I know when they were giving money back to countries that they had, that they held back for them, they paid them interest. Can we get some interest on this?
I'd be interested in just getting the $1.5 million for 52 years. That would be great.
Yeah.
So that's how the community colleges are funded.
Correct.
And let's bring it back now to
sales tax.
The sales tax. Now,
keep in mind, we do those 4 things I just mentioned.
Right.
We do. It's not mandated, and most counties do not do that. Just so we're clear.
Correct. And in addition, everything the county does benefits the towns. When we plow roads, we plow 17B. That helps people from the town of Bethel and the town of Forestburg or Coshecton.
Yeah, correct.
And Delaware get to work.
Correct. Moves people around.
Maybe we should put a toll on that then.
I don't know about that.
I don't know about that. I mean, that'd be the same logic.
Oh, I agree with you.
And if you went into that, I think somebody would raise an argument that, well, okay, if we're doing it based on where it's generated, wouldn't Thompson and Liberty get the lion's share of it? I mean, how much sales tax is generated in some of our smaller communities? Don't have big stores, not much.
Not much. So when I came into office, there was a plan to share sales tax. It was based on $1 million of sharing. So there was $1 million worth of sharing, and they broke it down, and they said, okay, let's do this. But, what one legislature does, another legislature can easily unravel or add to.
Right.
Okay? So what I mean by that is, so let's say you have a legislature that tends to be more, I'm not using this in a bad term, but more liberal. Okay? And they say, oh, I think that we should share sales tax. Okay? And they go and share the sales tax. And then, that legislature turns over and there's, new members on it, but enough new members to say, you know what? Our money's kind of tight around here in the county. I think we're going to get our chargebacks back. Right? We're no longer going to we're no longer going to, pay the chargebacks. I'll tell you right now, towns like Lumberland, Mamakaden, Thompson, they'd be hurt badly.
Hey, we don't want to be messing with Lumberland.
No, we love Lumberland.
We love Lumberland.
We love Lumberland.
Yeah.
So, but now take a town like
Zenga out there is doing a great job.
Doing a fantastic job.
She's doing a fantastic job.
So let's say you take a town like Mamakaden, okay, which is on the other side of the Wurstville Mountain, obviously,
Yep.
right? And so, why would you climb the mountain to go to school when and drive 35 minutes?
Right.
When Orange County Community College is 15
minutes down the
road. So let's go down there.
Sure.
They're charged back. So let's say we split up, pick a number, $3 million.
Okay.
And then you start breaking up again with 15 townships, and we're gonna go by the amount your township generates, right? And it's a percentage of that.
Sure.
Okay. I guarantee you, out of that $3 million, I mean, Mamakaden's chargeback is going to be more than that. They'd be in a net loss. Thompson would be in a net loss.
Well, Thompson might be in a net gain because an awful lot of sales tax generated in Thompson.
Oh, I understand that, but they also get compensated by the casino to the tune of $2 million and change annually. So then let's say there's not enough money the next year. And then they say, you know what, we're going to give the bridges back. So any bridges last 50 years, any bridge done in the last 5 years, now you own it.
You own it.
Right? And we start reducing the bridges.
Every year, the ones the last 5 years go back.
Correct. So then next year, we're having another bad year. Right? It's like the Joe Biden years all over again.
Yeah, right.
And then they turn around and they say, you know what, I don't know why we're carrying these workers' comp.
Yeah, why should we? They're town employees.
Yeah, the town employees.
Yeah.
Have at it.
Right.
See you later. Now, towns are terribly underwater. Terribly underwater.
That's right. Particularly the smaller towns in the western part of the county where, let's face it, it's some of the most beautiful areas to live and raise a family, and those are the communities that would be hurt by that.
Oh, I agree with you, but when the county is not obligated to do something, but they've been doing it, and it's not appreciated, and then the townships that are not appreciating are saying, well, we want more of your money.
Right.
Right? Well, we could bring industry to you.
Sure.
No, we don't want that.
We don't want industry.
Okay,
we just want your money.
Well, there's solar projects going all up over the western side. No, we don't want them either.
Right.
Okay, we want no IDA projects. We want no industry. We want to live our nice, peaceful life.
Right.
And then you turn around and say, well, you want our sales tax money. Okay, you want to get a piece of our sales tax money, but you don't want to generate any more sales tax.
No.
So how is that a fair deal?
Well, and then how does the county replace that hole?
They don't.
They don't, which means raising taxes.
Now the county has to raise taxes. So the legislatures that agree to it, let's say they agree to it in year 2 of their term. Now they have to replace. So just so we understand, right? When we hit the cap, you know what I mean? We always talk about going to the cap. Okay, it's not a lot of money.
Tax cap.
That's the tax cap. It's $2.2, $2.3 million. It's not a lot of money. You're increasing taxes over the whole county.
Right.
It's not a lot.
Not a lot of money.
But now you just handed, you're sharing 1 year's worth of that with all the townships.
Sure.
Okay. Now, how do you get that money back? Well, what services are you going to cut? Okay.
Well, you can't cut any services. That would be outrageous.
That would be insane, right?
Insane.
So now you turn around as a legislature and you say, okay, we're going to break the cap.
Right.
Okay. So now you have 9 people sitting there, and let's say I believe it takes 6 people to do this.
Mm-hmm.
So 6 of them say, let's do this. I mean, how easy is that campaign down the road?
Piece of cake.
I mean, wait, they broke the cap, charged you more money so that towns that don't want to improve on their business at all, can now generate more.
Well, or the county could, cut salaries. They could eliminate $3-4 million a year out of salaries.
Well, okay, then services would be cut as well. I mean, everyone has a job, everyone does something.
I'm sure that our unions would line up for a pay cut to allow the county to give money to towns.
I'm sure they would not, because now we're talking about, now you have, the COs in the jail part, right, and part of the sheriff's office. They're literally fighting for their lives on a daily basis.
Sure.
You can ask them to give money back.
So that we can give money to the towns. You want to go to, you want to go to DMV employees who don't get paid a lot now. Right.
Okay. And you want them to give money back? I mean, who's giving the money back here? All right. Because you as a township don't want to grow your town.
Right.
And keep up with the times. Okay.
And it can be done in balance.
It's an unfair balance currently because the county's picking up things that they're not mandated to.
Sure.
So now one person that's a supervisor in this fine county wrote a letter, and the person said, the county of Putnam over there on the Hudson River, I believe it is, right?
Sure.
And they share sales tax
right across the river from West Point.
Correct, and they're one of the 6 counties that don't have a city.
Okay.
Okay. So they're not mandated to. Now this is the other twist that most people won't tell you. That counties that don't have a city in them, currently we're one of them.
And there's 6 of them.
And there's 6 of them. You're not mandated to share your sales tax.
Okay.
Okay. Putnam's one of them. So that seems fair, right? Putnam does, so we should too.
Putnam's a small county.
Yes, small county,
not
no
a lot
big deal.
There's no city. There's not a lot of industry.
Correct. So
what does Putnam have a lot of?
So the one thing Putnam has a lot of, which I'm going to share with you as soon as I get my phone up here. I apologize. It's one of the most affluent counties in America.
In America.
Not in the state of New York. In America. Ranked 21st by median household income and 43rd by per capita income. Okay? Wow. So it's one of the richest counties
in the country.
In the whole country. Okay, so when you see that map, when they put it up on, going back to the presidential election, and they have every county distinguished across the land, okay, they're in the top 20 of the wealthiest counties in the whole country. In the whole country. So if they share a few bucks with you, it's not that big of a deal. We are a poverty county. Okay, right. We have areas that are below the poverty level. Okay,
sure.
So how is that fair to those townships?
Well, it's not at all.
Because those townships need more services.
And more social services.
Correct.
And more drug addiction services.
Correct.
And more Medicaid.
Correct.
So it's a snowball effect. It just grows and grows and grows. And we talk about the health rankings. Folks, health rankings are really a direct relationship with median household income.
That's what it comes down to.
That's what it is.
If you look at the top 20 counties, okay, in the state of New York,
right,
health-wise,
right,
except for the Bronx, they're all MTA counties.
Right.
They're all MTA counties.
Right.
Okay, well, it's an MTA county. That means that you have the right to work in New York City. Okay? You have the right to go down and not be a sheriff, that starts off here, let's say $60,000. You can go down and become a New York City police officer. You can become a New York City teacher.
You can't do that in Sullivan County.
You cannot do that. So the law originally was that you were supposed to be one county away from New York City.
So Rockland, Westchester.
No, Rockland, no, because
Rockland is a Bordersburg. Just Westchester.
Yeah, Westchester.
Westchester, Nassau.
Correct.
Not Suffolk.
There's 12 of them. So it's Nassau, Suffolk, the 5 boroughs, which puts you at 7. Rockland, Westchester, Putnam, Orange, Dutchess. Yeah, there you go. That's 12 of them. And even though if you own a commercial business, you have to pay the MTA tax plus the tolls. That's a different story for another day. But there was an article about 3 years ago in the Times Herald Record, oddly enough, that talked about the rate of wealth growth in Orange County from when they became an MTA county. You could actually see it climb. Okay, we are not one of those counties.
We are not.
We will not. We will probably never be one of those counties. So to compare us to one of those counties is just unfair.
So to take away any part of the sales tax from the county would inevitably result in one of two things happening. Balancing the budget with fund balance, which is a recipe for disaster.
Well, this legislature, I left $87 or $89 million, and that has been cut in half.
How much did you come in with?
$14 million.
$14 million.
Correct.
So you did such a bad job that you were basically flat across 4 years on your property tax budgets.
Yeah.
You eliminated taxes.
So we eliminated 2 taxes. That's correct.
And you sunset the one of them early.
Yeah, correct.
And
we sunset both of those taxes early.
And you did that while increasing the fund balance from $14 million to $87 million.
Correct. And we did not bond a dime.
And you didn't bond a dime, and you paid down a bunch of debt.
$26 million worth of debt.
And you renegotiated all of the contracts.
All 8 contracts with over 90% approval on all the votes.
And they all provided for increases annually.
Oh, all of them, yes.
So you did such a poor job that now the legislature in 1 year, where's the fund balance now?
They cut it in half. It's $37 million.
It's down to $37 million. That means that the legislature, in a year that they didn't design the budget, because they're still working through 24.
They worked on my budget.
They worked on your budget.
Correct.
And now 25, they're 3 months into working on their own budget.
And they have 8 contracts to settle.
And they've already burned through half of that fund balance in a year that they didn't even set the budget. That means that they just went outside the budget and spent more money.
Correct.
By half of that fund balance.
We also started the Promise Scholarship.
Right. Tell us about the Promise Scholarship.
So the Promise Scholarship, I felt that too many kids were leaving Sullivan County to go to other colleges. And I did not want to pay Orange County, who I think banked something like $40 million last year. I mean, it's insane. That little thing down in Monroe, that little shopping center, generates more sales tax than we do as a county, just so we're clear. Right. Okay. Plus now they have the rest of the county.
That's Woodbury Commons.
Yeah, Woodbury Commons. So what I did was I said, let's keep our kids home.
Sure.
Okay. So we started what was called the Promise Scholarship, that any child that graduates from high school, Sullivan County High School.
Or Sullivan County resident, if you went to Burke Catholic, for example, he'd be eligible.
Correct. And they apply for financial aid, even if they get zero financial aid. Even if they get zero, they must apply.
Right.
The county will pick up their whole tab at Sullivan County Community College.
So you go to SUNY Sullivan for free.
For free.
And that was a two-pronged thing, because it saved the county that chargeback revenue.
Correct.
And it gave a little infusion of full-time students to a college that was desperate.
More than half of the students there are on the Promise Scholarship.
Yeah. So without that, let's say that half of those wouldn't be there.
Correct.
You'd have a 25% reduction in an already dangerously low population there.
You're correct.
So that's a good example of the foresight that your legislature had.
Well, I felt that if we had a better educated workforce, we could do more here in the county, and it wouldn't just be menial jobs. We could start bringing in other industries that had higher paying jobs.
Well, you worked with the college with Jay Quentins, who was the last president. You would have worked with the new
We've
president.
been happy to.
And you were encouraging them to develop programs that met the needs of the county.
Correct.
And that's really the job of the partnership.
That is, well, they've been paid $100,000 for close to 20 years, and the contract specifically is to develop a workforce. That's what the contract is for.
That's what it's for. It's develop a workforce. The IDA is going to help bring people in.
Oh, and they do.
And they do.
They
and the
do.
partnership, and we know the Center for Discovery, the great work that they do, and they've built a hospital.
They're the largest
and
employer
they
in the
need
county.
respiratory therapists and
Nurses
nurses and
and all that
LPNs and the whole bit. The healthcare stuff, and we have a
Correct.
casino that needs a workforce.
Well, one of the things I pushed for when we were doing this was a CDL program
Sure.
at the college, and they got it, and they're graduating a lot of students. There's a lot of money in driving trucks in this country.
And they can jump in and start at $100,000 a year.
A lot of them do, yes.
With or without a high school diploma.
Correct.
So-
Not that we're suggesting not to get a high school diploma.
No, we're not.
But we're saying that we're trying to fit the needs of the county.
Right. So these are things that had been put in place, and some of them are still in place. Money's being spent outside of the budget.
Correct.
And coming up for our audience benefit in the next couple of weeks, we're going to do a report card on the legislature. And I, Sullivan, we do not take a political position here. We want to enlighten our audience to the issues that are affecting the county. We will welcome any of the legislators want to come and sit in that chair next to you and tell us, what they've been doing and what they've been doing to preserve that fund balance. Because let's face it, that fund balance is what made Sullivan County financially stable for the first time in really its history.
In our recorded history.
Yeah.
In our recorded history, first time ever.
And they've burned through half of it in 1 year.
Correct.
So once again, Rob, the hour has passed. We're just sitting there bantering back and forth.
The funny thing about
lots of
it
different
is,
things.
when the producer said, you have the full hour, I said, I don't know if we'll go the full hour today. And here we are, wishing I had another half hour.
Wishing we had another half hour because we want to talk about the airport development and Hatsola Air at the airport. I know something that's near and dear to your heart because of your businesses. The price of eggs are coming down.
There we go.
And that certainly is a good thing.
Go figure. You put a new ag commissioner in there, and all of a sudden they start dropping like $3-4 in a couple of weeks. Go figure.
It must have healed that bird flu. So, and then we want to get to the report card on the legislature. Again, folks, we remind you that the subscriptions are growing every week. We're getting great feedback. The episode that we did on the correction officers, I've been literally stopped in stores and in the bank because there's correction officers all over this county appreciating, and I get calls telling me, my husband went back to work and he was exposed and he's now in the hospital. So this is a real problem.
It's a growing problem.
And it's a problem that, just my opinion, the governor, I don't care Republican or Democrat, the governor is just not addressing it the right way, and these unions are up in arms right now.
She's addressing it. It's pretty heavy-handed. Those tactics are pretty heavy-handed.
Yeah, we've got people that took on a profession that they expected to retire from, and it was really a question of my health or my job. And I know one local correction officer that had attained a higher rank as an officer, a sergeant or captain, and he walked out. He's got 3 young children at home, his wife at home. His wife works also from the western part of the county, and he says, I'm just not going to run the risk of bringing this stuff home to my children and my wife.
That's fair.
And he's now getting ready to mow lawns for the summer, making a lot less money with no benefits, but he's doing it because it's not what he signed on for, and we've got a governor that just seems to be turning a deaf ear to these COs.
Well, they went on strike over safety issues.
Sure.
And it wasn't overpay. It wasn't over work time. It wasn't any of that. It was safety issues. And I think as the employer and as the state, you should want to keep your employees safe.
Well, you want to keep them safe. That's fundamental. We want to keep them safe. So again, folks, when you log on to Spotify or on YouTube, you want to make sure that you subscribe. Hit that subscribe button. It helps us when we get to 1,000 subscribers. We'll be able to open up some new interactive stuff and get in with live streaming and have a live chat. We need to get to 1,000 subscribers, so we ask you to help us out by subscribing. We also want you, when you watch on YouTube, to
smash
that like button and give us a comment. Leave us a comment. Let us know what you think. Let us know what you'd like to see in other shows. If you've got a view that differs from something that Rob or I said, if you take exception, leave us a comment. We're always happy to bring in a guest or share that comment with you. And share the link. We put these up on Spotify and we put them up on YouTube, but you can share it on your platform so that more people can see it, people that might be interested in what we're doing. And of course, if you want to drop us a line, our email is available at ionsullivan@gmail.com. That's EYE on Sullivan@gmail.com. Once again, the hour has passed so quickly. On behalf of the chairman, Rob Daugherty, this is Mike McGuire, thanking you for joining us for another episode of Ion Sullivan. Enjoy the spring weather,
it's beautiful,
at least until it turns back to winter, and we'll be back next week with another edition of Ion Sullivan.